Hi, I'm Mark Cotty from the National Disability Coordination Officer Program. My role is to help people with disability access and participate in education and employment. Part of that regime involves the use or role of assistive technology, especially when we talk about new devices. So this is a short video I've put together just to help get the message out there and a few tips and tricks. This episode in particular is the basic one, that's where you would start from. Won't go for too long, hopefully you enjoy it. You'll see me pop in and out with my face with this big screen, but a lot of it I'll take you through my desktop. Anyway, here it is. The first thing I want to introduce you to is what's called the SETT model, or S-E-T-T overview, and we've got S stands for student, E for environment, T for task, and T for tool. Now they actually come in that particular order to help you navigate the system of devices and where assistive technology is applied for an individual. So we always start with student, then we talk about the environment, then the task and the tool. Best way to give you an idea of this model is to show you a quick video. Here it is.
The SETT framework, a basis to assistive technology assessment. SETT is an acronym for student, environment, task, and tools. Working in that particular order, it provides a framework of where to from here when it comes to using assistive technology. Always start with the student. Focus on their current abilities and also their limitations. What are the other students doing that this student needs to be able to do? Second comes environments. Where will the activities take place? Fixed setting or mobile? Are we looking at one environment only, such as school, or does it also include the home or other community settings? Next comes tasks. What are we actually trying to achieve, and specifically, how do we put this into context regarding the previous two assessments of student and environments? Lastly comes the tools themselves. Tools are devices and services, anything that is needed to help the student access and participate in learning programs. Once you have identified a tool, you need to consider a range of additional factors. These include ease of use, cost, universality of one tool versus a complexity of using a range of tools, what are possible other non-tech options. Finally, a trial and evaluation of the inclusive technology selected needs to be undertaken and tested in the intended environments.
How was that? Pretty good? There you go. You've got the SETT model fixed in your head. I'm going to refer to it as we go through this presentation. The other thing to know is I will sometimes jump around on this scale. Once I understand the student, I may play around with the environment, task and tool depending on sometimes the limitations of one of those aspects. So I may only have one tool available, so I will start and work back and then realise that that tool is just not going to work. So we can actually save ourselves a lot of time and energy by using this model, by not pursuing something that we know is not going to work in the end. And very important to that is always environment. Cool, let's move on. All right, quick word of clarification around this, and I apologise if anything I mention in this presentation is out of date already, because the speed of technology moves so quick. I'll give you an example. When I first started looking at this 5 years ago, there was a survey went out to all the universities around what tools they're using in their institutions or organisations around assisting people with disability, and this was the top 5, as you can see up here. We've got JAWS, we've got Zoom Text, Dragon, Read, Write and Win. Win being a literacy tool, Read and Write also a literacy tool. Dragon, most people have heard of Dragon, it's voice to text. And then JAWS and Zoom Text are around that visual enhancement, around screen magnification, screen reading software stuff. That's all really, really good. And this was 5 years ago. And to tell you the truth, most of this stuff is still being used at university level. A few things to point out. The new devices we have, the new applications we have, will outdo these every time for a particular reason. Most of these tools and products are fixed to a desktop, so that there's no mobility about them. So it limits their capacity of use by an individual. So when you look at the SETT model, environment is always normally compromised with some of these tools. The other thing to bear in mind is cost. Being a hardware product, desktop product, they're very much license driven. So cost, for example, Dragon for a license to a desktop is around $500, or was at the time, up to $800. You can actually get that for free as an app. I know which one I'm going for already. Just one more thing before I leave this screenshot is Microsoft and Google and the big players around, even IBM, these sort of guys, they're all working really hard to make these products obsolete by building them as general accessibility options within their own products. So a lot of this stuff is actually becoming obsolete just because it's a standalone product. So there you go. Remember, just leading into that last conversation around Microsoft, Google, these sort of guys building their accessibility as a standard feature within their products. What we're talking about there is UDL principles. No, not the drink. Universal design learning. So and there's some good research there. CAST is a really good one there that I featured. What I want to mention about that is we really need to be mindful of how we actually teach our stuff. The more we can get into the universal design learning principles, the less likely we are going to be needing this extra supports and devices. So, or the better we get at being able to make use of those devices for the learner and from the learner's point of view. And now a really quick example of how things are changing. Back in the old days, we used to have charcoal. We draw on the wall, on whatever you like, really. But thinking slate days, way back in the early classrooms. Then we moved to the old ink pens. Then we actually went to a biro pen. Then we went to a typewriter. We went to an electronic typewriter, to a word processor. The reason I wanted to mention that is sometimes we get stuck in a mentality of thinking. So the typewriter of old, has anyone heard of the QWERTY keyboard? This is the reason we have a QWERTY keyboard and the keys are organised in a particular format was to stop the keys of the typewriter mashing together and stopping the efficient operation of a typewriter. Guess what? We have a word processor now where we don't have keys physically doing that, but how come we're still using a QWERTY keyboard? I always get caught out on my mobile device because I and O are right next to each other, and you'll find you may have the same sort of experience. Why do we still sit with that format? So I'm just challenging you there that sometimes the old style of thinking can be, that's just what we've always done. We need to break out of that mentality. The other thing I want to mention really quickly there is sometimes you're not getting treated right and some of this device stuff's not going to work. You do have rights. There's a good booklet there produced by the NDCO program, and I'll show you that in my resources. Moving on, but staying in the past, my first exposure to this sort of stuff was back in 2013 when I attended a Spectronics conference. To help me make sense of what I'd learnt in that one-day presentation, I put together I suppose you could call it an infograph or a chart. Basically, it's an overview of all the systems and products out there and where it fits into the world of disability. Let's have a look at it.
So the chart is broken up into three different items. We've got our hardware, software, and what I've called netware. Let's have a look at these individually. When I talk about device type or the hardware, these things can include everything that a smartphone, tablet, a computer and notepad, and sometimes these are hybrids of each other. So a Microsoft Surface Pro, for example, is a laptop computer, but you can detach the top of it and it becomes like an iPad. What you need to know about these different, all these different products is they will all work off a different system or platform. For example, Apple uses the iOS device. The Samsung tablets or phones, for example, all work off an Android platform, and then you have Windows, which has its own platform. When we have a look at the different platforms, you'll see that they all have different accessibility functions. So the Apple products, which is the iOS, which we've already seen, has a much bigger range of accessibility features than, say, the Samsung or Android range. Quite limited in some capacities. And then you have your Windows, which is actually getting a lot better than it used to be, and it's probably matching the iOS ones. Then we come to the software or what I call the application side of things. So there's a whole bunch of different apps that you can get. Most of them, most of the ones I get are free, or light versions, to check out whether they're applicable or not. And then you might want to upgrade as you go through and see that they're what you want. We've then got what I call netware, and this is the thing I really want to point out at this point. A lot of the features and functionality of the programs only work really well when you've got some of these other aspects ticked off. So an email account is almost critical for setting up your Google Store, or sorry, your Google Play Store or your Apple Store. That means you end up getting an account. So all these accounts are based off an email, and then you've got payment options. I use a load and go from the post office, so they're not linked to my main financial accounts, just in case you get hacked or security is an issue. So you get a load and go debit card. You put as much money on as you see fit to cover what you require, and then you link it to your machine, and there you can do some purchasing. These are all measures as to how well someone can work independently with a device type. The other thing to mention is this stuff here, and that's where about using the cloud to move stuff around, because some devices have limited capacity of storage. Some are better others than that. So, for example, my Samsung Pad has the ability to put a micro SD card in there, so I can store a lot more information or product in there, where my Apple doesn't have that facility. So I'm actually relying off Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive to move files and products and videos, photos, etc. around. One of the really big things to note here is connectivity. A lot of the functionality or features within a product, be it hardware or software, may be limited if it's not connected to the Wi-Fi internet of some description. So if you've got a device that's actually got a 4G card in it and will hook up to a tower, for example, then you can use that product basically as long as you've got mobile tower coverage. But your data costs will be fairly high. So Wi-Fi, or plugging in, connecting to a Wi-Fi, is really important. And if you don't have that functionality or capacity to do that, a lot of the features within the products are limited, be it hardware or software components. And a really good example of that is the speech to text functionality. They will not work on most products if they are not hooked up to the Wi-Fi. And it's just the way the products are set up and the way the devices work. So you can see under your set system, environment, if you're working in an environment with no connectivity, you are going to have some real issues. So that's where it fits into the set product stuff. So you consider where you can get Wi-Fi to use it properly. That's as good of an overview I can give you of all the considerations when you're thinking about devices and what device to use or what devices are available. So the three main components again is your hardware, software, and don't forget your netware and connectivity components and how important they are when meeting the needs that you want.
So there you have it. That's a pretty good overview of all the systems that we operate under and how they operate together, because realistically they don't stand alone in the reality of how we use stuff. It's a real ecosystem of technologies. So whilst they have individual platforms, each platform actually borrows and leverages off each other. So it's more of a jungle ecosystem of stuff, not just a separate stuff. It's not just separate. Now I have done a video on this before. I've called it toy versus tool. Again, I did that back in probably 2014, when I was still getting my head around stuff, but it gives you a really good overview of all those systems if you want to go back and have a look at it in depth. I won't do it now. One really important point to make here is around accessibility features. I'm using the iOS device here, so the Apple products here as an example. In your settings, you have a thing called General, and then you go to an accessibility menu, and you can change a whole bunch of features that drive that product to make it more accessible for the individual, depending on what their issue is. For example, if they have some vision issues, you can have big, large text. You can have the speech select feature turned on. Hearing, you can have hearing aids linked through a Bluetooth device. You can have subtitles and caption options put in there. Learning, you've got guided access. Physical and motor switching controls. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there already, built in, that you could apply without going into the application side of things. That may just meet the challenge that you're facing straight away. The other thing to bear in mind is, if you've got an individual that's faced with a number of issues, it's going to make it easier to get to a successful outcome by mixing and matching a whole bunch of different products, but using this feature of its device, the accessibility features of the device. Some devices do this really well, some not so well, but they're all coming together. Not too bad. They're all sort of looking at it. Don't forget this thing over here. Does anyone know what that is? That's what I ask a lot of people when I go to my sessions. Very rarely do I have someone put up their hand and say, yeah, I know what that is. It's actually an ease of access symbol from Microsoft Desktop. So a lot of these setting features you can already find in a desktop computer. So don't forget that that's there as part of your option of suites when you're looking through your set device. Yep, check it out. Ease of access, type it in your search bar, it'll pop up. So I've already talked about UDL principles and that aspect of where it fits into the learning and teaching methodology. Here's a really good word for you, pedagogy. Teachers will know what it is. I never knew what it was 5 years ago, but I do now. The reason I mention it is from a teacher's point of view, you need to get out there and have a look what's available and what each product can do for you, just by Googling it, for example, or searching it, the best search engine that you've got. And you'll find a whole bunch of articles. There's no shortage of articles around how this stuff works and what particular disability type might be covered by a particular tool or product. So you've got to get out there and have a look, is what I'm saying. The other part of it is, you need to get some sand in your pants. And when I say that, you need to jump into the sand pit and have a play around. You need to have a play around with this stuff and check it out. There's no good trying to work this stuff from the sidelines. You've got to have a pretty in-depth, or not an in-depth, but you need to have an understanding of what the limitations of the product work. That'll give you a better chance of meeting that set model by knowing where the limitations of the tool or product are. So you'll get a better idea of where environment fits in and the task and tool stuff. So just another quick thing around resources while I'm on that subject. I'm having a look around out there on the World Wide Web. One of the things that you may come across is what's called the Pedagogy wheel versions or themes. They're a really good starting place. If we look on the set tool, if we're looking at task and tool, this is what these things do really well. They'll give you an idea of the task you're looking at and what tool there is that meets that task in a really colourful and easy to use manner. And they're different ones for different sort of disability types. That's really worth having a look at. I recommend jumping on to or even just looking up Pedagogy wheel. Again, these links will be in the resources component. I've talked a lot about Apple products and the iOS sort of platform. I don't want to dismiss Google here though. The Google mission is to organise the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That's their mission, and it's pretty integral to the way they're developing their products and can help you in a really big way. And I'll show you that by having a look at this. If you type in Google tips and tricks, you will have endless pages of stuff, because Google, and use the Google platform if you like to do it. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there and resources and guides that are going to help you. And Google does it not through its hardware products and accessibility features within those products. They do it with lots of add-ons. Your Google Forms, your Google Docs, Google Slides. All these sort of things have these features. There's a really good dictation one actually for your desktop, text-to-speech and speech-to-text ones. And they're just add-on tools. So you hook yourself up with a Google Suite account, as you just get a Gmail email, and a lot of these tools will come up automatically for you. Again, it's about having a look for it, but I can't underestimate the amount of product stuff and development that Google are doing around this sort of stuff, so don't dismiss it. And a lot of you looking at this video will be quite familiar with the Google products and how the Google education resources are being developed for you. I showed you that little feature before around how learning's changing, right through the typewriter. I mentioned that QWERTY keyboard stuff. Really what's happening is we're moving into digital learning. So with that in mind, I just want to point out a couple of things. Because text now is in a digital format, we've got things like iBooks and e-textbooks as functionality components have really good applications for learners of all levels actually, because of the way you can have text to speech read out to you. And it also lets you annotate pages where, the old pen highlighters, they're pretty much gone now, when I do my study anyway. And that's a feature for anyone to be aware of. Ebooks and iBooks, really important feature in today's learning environment. And for those people who are a bit squirmy or they find that as mechanical type robot voices a bit annoying, a bit grating, don't forget the whole selection of audio books. And we've even got to the point now, this is where to get into that video stuff, where books are being read onto video by people and being posted to YouTube. So that's a really good option for kids that can't read and write, or for anyone that can't read and write. Audio books, ebooks, iBooks, YouTube videos. There's a whole bunch of stuff coming out to keep an eye on. So don't forget about these products and how they are applicable. Again, this is really about universal design stuff. So making sure that you present materials in various formats, because that makes life a lot easier. I'm going to read this one to you really quickly. The App Store features over 75,000 education apps designed especially for iPad, just for iPad alone. That cover a wide range of subjects for every grade level and learning style. So you can see there's lots and lots of stuff out there. What I want to mention here is a lot of this stuff's been around for a while now, and in technology terms, a few years is quite a while. Some are starting to stand the test of time, so to speak. And the really good ones are actually being bought up and being put and replaced into different products, and Evernote's a good example of that. The other thing to mention here is you can get to this, there's a lot of same products, and a really good example of that is Evernote versus OneNote. It's really it's an individual style which one to go with and which one you prefer. Some will have little different features that may be applicable for the situation you're in, but don't get too caught up on that. Really just got to have a feel for which one suits you best, and this is really an intuition thing. It's a bit like saying which shampoo am I going to use. Really, they might be the same product. One's just got a different label on the front that makes it look pretty for you. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that right now. That'll be in my next video in this series, where I'll look at the resources and how they actually apply them, and some of the limitations and barriers and where they come into the play. So anyway, that's it for me on this video. Just a quick reminder, I do have a newsletter that features a tech page that keeps you up to date with all the new stuff coming out in technology land, in the education sector. Available, just subscribe to me, or send me an email, catch me on Facebook, LinkedIn, send me a note, I'll put you on the list, and I can get that to you once a month. Cheers.